Hi, my name is Andy Alawani, and I'm a senior at Westview High School. Today, I'm going to be teaching you how to create a simple tic-tac-toe game in Swift. What you first want to do is in Xcode, create a new project. Once you get to this screen, click on your main storyboard. This is where you do all the GUI in Swift. The first thing you need for this game is an image view. Drag that onto the screen and try and make that as square as possible. This will serve as the board for our game. My image view is about 345 by 345. Set the image view to the grid.png image. Once again, this creates the board of our game. Now we have to create the individual X's and O's for the 9 different segments of our board. To do this, create a button for each one, search button, and drag it on the screen. For each button, you can actually set the image that it displays. In this case, we're going to be setting it to the x.png image. We can resize it and fit it into the square. Now we can copy paste it 8 more times and fit them into the other boxes of our grid. That should give us a full game board. So just drag them and fit them in. And there we go, our completed board. Our next task is to get input from these buttons. The way that we do that is using action handlers. Click this button on the top right, control click one of the buttons, and drag it over to the view controller object. We set the connection to action and name it click. You can name this whatever you want. Every time a button is clicked, it goes to that action handler method. What's cool about Swift is that you can link multiple GUI elements to one action handler. For example, click one of the other buttons and drag it to the same method. You can do this for all the buttons. There are many GUI elements in Swift. For example, the button or the text field. Let's create a text field now. Type in text field and drag it to the screen. And resize it how you see fit. The text field will be important in telling the users who has won the tic-tac-toe game. Text fields also need a handler. So control-click the text field to the view controller class. The connection is outlet, and the name is field. Now, we can go back to the GUI and add a tag for each button. The tags will help us organize the buttons in the future. Start with one and go horizontally for the buttons. Go to the next row and continue. Now each button should have a unique tag. Next, we want to make sure that the X's don't show up at the beginning of the game. For this reason, we want to just switch the images to an empty image. And since the size of the image is correct, we can just delete the x.png for every button. This will retain our buttons in the same location, just change the starting images. Cool, now we have a complete GUI of the game. We will now go over the code for the game. I will be giving you the full code at the beginning and go through every single part of the code. Here's the complete code. You should have these two functions from before and these two functions at the end. The active variable denotes which player has their turn next. For example, if active is 1, that means that the X player, or the first player, has their turn next. The game over variable tells us whether the game is over or not. This variable is useful in letting us know whether to reset the board. The values tells us what is assigned to each button. 0 is nothing, 1 is X, and 2 is 0. The combinations are all the possible winning combinations for the game. In the click action handler, set field.text to nil. We want to make sure that the text field starts off empty because no one has won. Next, we have an if statement. This if statement is extremely important. It checks whether the button in question has already been pressed before, because we don't want allow players to revert buttons that have already been pressed. For example, we don't want the X player to be able to revert the circle button. And for this reason, we only allow buttons to be changed if they have not been pressed yet, and if the game is not over. If the active player is X, denoted by 1, we set the image of the button to X, set the next active player to circle, because the circle player goes next, and we set the actual value of the button to 1, because that denotes X. In the opposite scenario, if circle presses the button, we set the image to circle, set the next active player to 1 or X, and we set the value to 2, which denotes circle. Next, we have a for loop in the code. This for loop is important because we want to continuously check whether all the images have been used up and no combinations are met, or whether a combination has been met regardless of whether all the images have been used up. We check for every combination, and we check in all of the 9 buttons whether all of them have been set to either x.png or circle.png. If they are, we set the game over as true. If not, we check for the combinations themselves and check if the first is not null and if all 3 of the buttons are the same. If the value is 1 for one of the buttons, then we say that X wins. Otherwise, we set circle wins. Regardless, we set game over to true. If game over is true, we reset the values all to 0. We reset the images from the tags 1 to 9 and set game over to false so we can restart the game from the top. The next task is to test the code. Click the triangle at the top of the screen and it should open up a simulator. It takes some time, and okay, so it's installing our app. Awesome, that's our GUI. Now we can try and test the game out. If you click the buttons, you can see that the image changes depending on whose turn it is. And if we create a line of X's, the game should reset and say that X wins. However, if nobody wins, nothing should be said, but the game should still reset. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot about Swift and enjoyed working with it. Make sure to come out to the Ekal Appathon. Thank you.